or another side of the bridge there. But when this was put up in the 50s, I'm sure they did the right homework and they have it in the right place. So this is actually our first time doing this wee bit about Roddy McCurry, so we're probably going to be a wee bit rusty, so just be a bit patient, you know. So I'll just read out first what the newsletter had to say about what happened here on the 2nd, or well, this is from the Belfast newsletter on Sunday the 2nd of March 1800. So upon Friday last, so that would be either Good Friday or the last Friday in February, a most awful procession took place here, namely the escorting of Roddy McCurry, who was lately convicted at court-martial to place of execution to Bridge. The unfortunate man, having been bred in that neighbourhood, as a warning to others, and it is proper to observe that the whole course of his life was devoted to disorderly proceedings of every kind. I know. For many years, fiercely at quarter sessions occurred, but what the name of Roger McCurry appeared in variety of criminal cases. His body was given to dissection and afterwards buried under the gallows. So he was buried here. The news article says that he was involved in a number of different court cases, but you have to realize at the time here, what was given in the newspaper was trying to put down the memory of what had happened here, and really to put down his memory, so no one remembered him. But from that, we can take that there was firstly there was a procession. Now these processions were odd, they were not common, and only really happened during the United Irishman era, when someone died, had unfortunately died, or an unjust death. So there are many examples of these processions happening, mainly from Ballymena to Kells, or Ballymena to a place of death. A big one went from Ballymena, which we've got a lot of information on, to Kells. Was a 19-year-old boy. He was sentenced to death in Kells, and there's a procession, the same as this here, to Kells, and was lined, the whole streets were lined by people singing psalms. And it was really, once you read what actually happened to the court case and the printed observance, which was to put down the memory of the United, I'll bring a tear to your eye, some of these things, you know. But as I say, there was a procession which is mentioned in the article, which is very odd when they're trying to put down the rest of the wee article tries to dismember him by saying he was a rogue and he was involved in different types of crimes in the neighbourhood, right? So as I say, it also says he was involved in a lot of other criminal cases. We haven't found any evidence for this, and we have been scouring the archives down in Dublin, and there's nothing that we can find. So previous to Roger McCurry, folklore says that he was born in this area somewhere, and his father was a mill owner. Now at that time, the whole family, they were Roman Catholics, and they weren't allowed to own mills. You know, it was the landowner who owned the mill. It was then sent out to a tenant who was a Church of Ireland member of the Church of Ireland. So that wee bit we can take away from pinch of salt. Folklore also says that his father he did something wrong, and he was sent to the West Indies. He was basically commissioned into the army to serve as a punishment. So we don't know if any of that's right or wrong. We do know that his mother at the time of the rebellion was in a relationship with one of the Orr family, and they had moved to a place called Ballyscullion, a couple of miles that way across Lough Beg. And in Ballyscullion, the memory of the McCurrys is very, very rich, and they have within their townlands they have a McCurry Brae and a McCurry Hill. And on the morning of the 7th of June, it is said that Roger, with the Brown family from Blackey and Ballyscullion, got a boat across Lough Beg and participated in the Battle of Antrim and the Battle of Antrim, Ranelstown here, you know. After the Battle of Antrim, one of the Brown family was shot, but he was able to make it. He tried to make it home. He made it about half a mile up the road here, and he said to his brother, "I have to lie down here." He lay down and he died, and there's a Brown's grave just up the road here, about half a mile. But you get all these different places around here are named after the local United Irishmen who unfortunately died at that time. But straight after the United for the last 225 years, there's never been any written evidence supporting that Roger was a United Irishman or Roger was implicated in the rebellion at all. It's always been passed down, and you get all these scholars, historical scholars and big doctors doing all these theses and stuff saying that maybe it was, maybe it wasn't, and that's all you get. I was at a big talk last year in Antrim, and it was maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. It's unreal, like. But last Christmas a fellow called Colin O'Rourke, we're doing another wee book on those who were sentenced to serve in the West Indies and in the army. He found this document of a fellow called David McCord, a big farmer up the road here, and we go past his farm on the way. But during his trial, it actually says that a man, McCann, informs that McCord tried to get him to rise out, and two brothers, Roger and Hugh McCorley, tried to get him to come out and rise on the 6th and 7th of June 1798. So that's the only written evidence we have that he was a United Irishman and participated, which is fantastic because this is actual proof that he lived, and his name was correct as well, Roger McCrory. In all the evidence in 1780, all the court or all the stuff in the papers, it's always called Roger. Folklore has changed his name, and it's mainly due to Ethna Carberry or Annie Johnson in this fabulous poem for the 100th anniversary called Roddy McCrory. So this is his name here. It's Roddy McCrory. We don't know if he was called that, so we can't really. I think it's wrong that that's put up there. It should go back to his original name. I mean, if I was called in 100 years, someone called me Joe, you know, I wouldn't be too happy. But I suppose that's life, you know.
What you could do about it, you could end.
I know that. That's why we have to stick for ourselves now. No one call me Joe, please. Right. So after that, he was a wanted man. Okay, so he joined a gang which was called the Archer Gang. It was head up by a man called Thomas Archer. He had fled from the army. He had participated in the battle of the battle for Ballymena, and he led a gang. The gang members were Ryan Dunn, a man called surnamed Shield, and Nielsen, a Dr. Lynn from Drummond outside Brannelstown, and Thomas Archer. Now they were known as referees, or basically highwaymen. We don't really know much about what Roger did when he was a referee, but there was some of the stuff that Thomas did himself. He would go to local loyalists. He would help put down the rebellion and basically name them, you know. And some people he did kill them, you know, which wasn't very nice. But on the 4th of February 1800, the Rasharkin infantry arrested one Roger McCrory near a hoggle. So this is news extract from the 4th of February. It says that he had been involved in treacherous acts, and when confronted, he had a loaded blunderbuss, and he had threatened to shoot the arresting George Bistow Esquire, but he didn't shoot him. Now, when Thomas Archer was arrested, he offloaded that blunderbuss into the arresting officer, and that boy was killed. But he took, I suppose he knew his time had come to. Maybe he was preparing for it, and he knew what was going to come. There was probably a whole terror of people, yeomen outside his house. If he hadn't been taken by George, he would have been taken by someone else, you know. So the way Survey's memoirs came around here in 1833, and they have a wee short sentence dedicated to what happened here. In the year of the Irish Rebellion, Roger, again the right name, McCrory, was hanged and buried on the bridge at Tuam. And I talked a wee bit about the folklore in the area, about McCrory's Brae, McCrory's Hill. So just to tell you a wee bit about the aftermath of the 1798 rebellion. Once Rannelstown was taken by the rebels, the rebels then split up. About 100 rebels were missioned to take down this bridge to stop reinforcements coming from Magherfield and Ballyronan the Salterstown Yeomanry was based out of Ballyronan, so there's a big garrison town, big garrison area there. So on the way down here to Antrim, they met the Salterstown Yeomanry. There's about 20 men meeting 100 pikes. They seen them coming and they ambushed them. Now the pikes went up and one of the Salterstown Yeomanry was hit in the belly, a man called Hull, and he fell dead to the ground off his horse. Then they had to retreat really fast. There's 100 of these boys with pikes, and as I was confronted with a pike on Saturday during the reenactment, it's not a nice thing when you have a pike come bearing down on you. Let me tell you, it's scary, very scary. But they had to retreat. The Yeomanry retreated back to Magherafelt, and the local 100 United Irishmen set forth to take down this bridge here. Now, it's hard to know when the bridge was put up. Probably about 1720. There was a lot of bridge building happening during there. So they started off taking down the bridge at the same time that the boys from Mackara, they all had to flee, for they were being basically surrounded. So they fled from Crew Hill for the Mackara, just a couple of miles that way. A detachment came here from Mackara saying, "Do you want to hand take down the bridge?" But I suppose the people around here were a bit frowned. They said, "No, go away, we're alright, we'll take it down." So it took all night to take down the bridge. 8 o'clock in the morning we had a big splash, the bridge came down. So that was all night. We had pickaxes and forks and every instrument. You know, it must have been a fairly stable bridge to take down. So that's the bridge there. That was put up only a few years ago, but it was always in this area. This would have been the original site of the bridge anyway. But in 1860, I believe it was 1860, a man called Hugh McCrory was commissioned to do works on the bridge here. Now remember back to the news article where it was Hugh and Roger McCrory were implicated at the trial. Now if that was the same Hugh, Roger's brother, he would have been in his 80s. Most likely it was maybe one of his uncles. Now Hugh McCrory was commissioned to take it down. He asked the government if he could, well, he told them that one of his relatives was buried here in 1798 and could he resurrect his body and reinter it. So he came here and he took out a body. Now it's hard to know if it was Roger or not, because who knows how many bodies were buried here, you know. There could have been half a dozen, you just don't know. I don't know yet anyway. So he took a body which he thought was Roddy McCrory, and he was able to inter it up the road here in Dunedin, Church of Ireland. Now, the Church of Ireland was the established church, so that's the only place he was allowed to bury it. Now, without any headstone, just reinterred. So after Roddy was hanged here, his body was taken for medical dissection. At that time, it was during the middle of the Napoleonic Wars, and there was really a need to know how the anatomy worked. I think it was 1807 that a big surgeon's hospital was built in Dublin to train people up, to train Irishmen up to serve in the Napoleonic Wars to be surgeons and doctors. So there's a big push for more of this medical practice. So he was taken out here, and we're going to now pass where he was taken for dissection. His body was laid on a windowsill. The window was taken out, and his body was laid, and it was sliced open. And then he was taken over here and buried. So we're going to go past the house that he was taken into, and where he was everybody came to see him being disinterred and opened up, and it's not very nice, you know. But that's it from here anyway. Donald, have you anything to add? Right, so next up is Dunedin, Church of Ireland. So I'll take you there, I'll give you a couple of stories about what happened up there, and then I'll show you Roger's grave, and then we'll go from there. You probably maybe seen, we just passed what was a wee village. It was a village of Duneen. Nowadays it's just a pub and a couple of wee houses, and it doesn't look like a village now. But back then it was a village, and the owner of that shop there was a man called William Scott. Now William Scott was the captain of the Duneen United Irishmen, and on the morning of the 7th he got all his men together on the road into order, and because he was a shop owner and spirit dealer, he gave everyone a shot of whiskey, and they all took a shot at it before they headed off. I tried to get whiskey for you and all, but I think Donald drank it, unfortunately. But we do have water for you, and we'll give it out after here. So we're going to go up to the church, and the first thing, we're going to stop just outside the church here. I'm going to show you a wee plaque on the front of the wall. So come on ahead. Really, he was the one who was martyred in 1777 or 1797, sorry, at Carrickfergus, and then he was known as the first martyr of the United Irishmen. You all know about him, yeah? Maybe you don't.
No. We know a wee bit.
Well,
Only a wee bit.
he was from Farnshain outside Antrim there. His father was a purveyor of goods to the Shane's Castle estate. They were a big Presbyterian farmer, running about 100 acres, so beef cattle mainly. But he married Isabella Greer, and he was an enlightened figure. He went to live up just outside Antrim on the Farnshain Road, and he operated like a bleach green, so where you'd put all the fabric out in the fields and bleached in the sun, you know, that kind of thing. So he also would write for the radical newspaper, the Northern Star, these grand poems, but he was also a United Irishman, a man. In 1797, there was a militia was travelling from Belfast to Londonderry, and two of them stopped in Antrim town. They had a lot to drink, and they were taken up to Farnshain, where they were signed in as United Irishmen, not by William Moore, but by another man who actually flitted and left the country. But William Moore was picked up for it, and he languished in Carrick jail for about 3 months, and there was no one ever was hanged or killed for being a United Irishman before that in a public trial. So he was tried. The first man who gave evidence against him, it was just ridiculous, so it was thrown out. The second one was a man named Wheatley at Scott's Fenceville. His was taken as evidence, and in fact the jury at that time was the local, the magistrates and all, and they were actually plied with drink. And when they came back with a verdict guilty, the judge, I think he cried, because he knew this was a mockery of the legal system. But he was hanged at the gallows where the current KFC is in Carrickfergus, and he was taken to Ballymuir where he was waked, and it was illegal for him to have a wake. So Reverend Hill from Blanchstown here, he became minister in Ballymuir, Presbyterian minister. He waked him, and throughout the night you had the local the Masonic order just surrounded the building, and all the farmers from all around this countryside came to his possession and to protect the church and the body. So he had hundreds of thousands of men came all night to his wake, and that morning an order was sent to Ballymuir, to the yeomanry, to dispel these boys, put them down, and fair play to them. Some good yeomen, some bad yeomen, most of them bad. They kept their doors shut. There were big yeoman barracks outside Ballymuir. They wouldn't leave it. They knew this was wrong. So that morning they had a big procession into Temple Patrick from Ballymuir, and that was lined with thousands and thousands of ordinary folk of all religions came out to just line it. Now it was deemed illegal again, and there was troops from Blair Escant and Belfast were dispatched to come up here to put down that to put the procession down and to disperse the crowd, but there's too many of them, couldn't do it. So he was buried in the church and church graveyard, and this is where he was married to Isabella Greer. Now, probably see this tablet here. So we'll go back to the story of Roddy McCorley. The man who hanged Roddy McCorley was a man called after the rebellion, the Dunbartonshire regiment was garrisoned Tim. So it was a man called, how long there I get it, Stuart Dallas, who pulled the lever to hang him. Now within 6 months he drowned in the River Bann there. So it was a wee bit of still is a wee bit of celebration in the town here that he was killed 6 months after he hanged their great Roddy McCrory, or Roger as I should be. But we'll go right round now to the very back where there should have been another tablet like this, but it was smashed on the 150th anniversary and now lies in a farmer's shed. But we'll go around like trial. But in March, April 1797, 4 or 5 months before William Marr's trial, large swathes of Tyrone and Fermanagh rose naturally in the United Irishmen, and Blair's, well, the newsletter covers it, where troops are dispatched from Blair's Camp Lisburn to put down the United Irishmen who have taken over Fermanagh and Tyrone. It's mad that, and to take them, there must have been hundreds killed down there, and we just don't know about it, and it's not been preserved in folklore lore. You just get these wee snippets that you can find in newspapers that we have put down the rebels in Fermanagh. This is a year before the actual uprising up here. Also, the year before you have the, not the Monmouth, it's a Louth militia. I think it was the Louth. There was 30 of them were killed for being a United Irishman. This was in 1796. So there was a lot of United Irishmen killed before him, before William Marr, but William was the first in a public trial, and from then on William Marr's name would come synonymous with the rising, and the cries would be "Remember R," and they would take wee green trinkets and put it in their hats and stuff like that there. But so on this wall here there was a plaque up until 50 years ago dedicated to Roger McCrory, and just a wee bit of details on the 150th anniversary. It was smashed. There was too many people coming here, and I don't know who smashed it. A local Presbyterian is actually keeping the memory alive, and he keeps it in his barn for safekeeping until a time where he can get it restored properly. But we'll come over here to where Roger was buried. So he wasn't allowed to have any tombstone. This was the established church, and because it wasn't properly identified that this was Roger, there was no tombstone put up. But this is where Roger lies today, Roger or Roddy McCorley. So this is, there's not too many people know this, to be honest with you. We put it on the internet all the time, but no one really knows. But I want to show you this wee grave as well, if you don't mind. This is the grave of Adam Dickey. This is one of the richest men in Ireland at that time. He owned a whole maybe 10 or so mills up the River Main, from Ballymena to Collybackie to Ranaldstown here. Actually, one of his mills outside Ranaldstown looks on to where John McCracken lived, Henry Joy's father, and it's amazing when you go down to it. But Adam Dickey owned a lot of houses in Ranaldstown, right? So the night of the rebellion was put down in Antrim. He went to the Shane's Castle to negotiate the surrender, the peaceful surrender of Ranaldstown here. Now Ranaldstown, they had no choice but to surrender. There was thousands of they were going to be borne down upon thousands of militia and military from all over. There was Dublin militia were in Antrim, Tipperary militia were in Antrim. Monaghan, people only think the Monaghan militia was there, but that's incorrect. Now this boy here negotiated the surrender of Ranaldstown. He said that, right, 10 o'clock in the morning you'll have all the pikes and the magistrates and all those who were taken up to Grogan Hill, about 3 miles outside Ranaldstown. There was an old Elizabethan fort up there, which was being used by the United Irishmen to keep the prisoners, right? So, unbeknown to Adam Dickey, those prisoners had actually moved to Ballymena, where it was more safe. That's where the United Irishmen had taken full control of that town, and it wasn't going to fall anytime soon. Well, for a couple of days anyway. So at 10 o'clock, all the pikes and all the weapons were sent up to Shane's Castle, but there was no of the militia or the yeomen that were captured. So what happened? 1 o'clock, the cannons were all lined up, and the town was bombarded. For about an hour, it was bombarded, and it was set on fire. The whole place just wiped off. There's a few places were safe, like the church and all our areas, which we will go to now. So behind you there is where Roddy lies. It's where Hugh McCrory was allowed to put him. And it's a beautiful, stunning church of Stunning behind here, where Elizabeth Greer and William Moore were married in. Now it's hard to know why they're married in that church, for it's actually quite a far away from where William Moore lived. And at that time, it wasn't tradition to go to the wife's church, you know. So I often wondered why it was here. And I don't know if his wife was from here, to be honest with you. 1940-ish, you know. During the Irish Wars, the Confederate Wars started in 1641. Monroe's army came with Covenanters, about 5,000 Covenanters came here, but they came with the Presbyterian ministers. And during the plantation of Ulster, this part wasn't planted. This was natural plantation from the old landlords. More Derry, you would see the plantation of Ulster take hold properly, but they came with the Presbyterian ministers also. That's why you have one of the oldest congregations is Ballykelly over there, and you've got Larne up the top, is so close to Scotland, and you've got Rannelstown here. But during 1798 rebellion, this church, it wasn't touched, but the women and children all took refuge in here, and they stayed in here. The women that didn't fight, there was a wild lot of women who did fight and did take up arms, which was very good. So I'm just going to take you around the back here to talk about. If you go around the back to James R, he was a sheriff of Cranfield in 1798. Sheriff was just where we came from, Dunedin. That was all just classified as Cranfield at the time. Now, the sheriff of Cranfield, James R, was the brother of William R, the martyr. He was hanged in Carrickfergus. During his trial, James tried wild lot to try to save him. He put articles in the newsletter saying that, okay, William has admitted his crime, go to him now and he will say this and release him. Because it wasn't the year in 1796, to become a United Irishman became a capital crime, which meant you could be killed, but no one had been killed. And actually, when he was languishing in the jail, he was offered a key to his cell, but because no one had died, he thought, I'm alright here, I'll just wait it out. He got 2 reprieves, and then the second was due the day he was going to be hanged, which never came. So he was hanged, and while he was he thought he was going to get a reprieve that day. But this is to William R and James R. William became highfalutin solicitor in Ballymena, and James did his best to try to save his brother. So this is William R, would be his nephew of William R, the martyr. So now we're going to go out the front here, and I'm going to tell you about another wee Presbyterian minister, if you don't mind. I'll be here all day. Right. So it was set up, there's a man called Reverend Smith. He was from the minister of Kilrea. He was told to come here because this church was getting a wee bit too radical. So he came here in 1788 and he established the second Presbyterian church. Of course, that's now the first. This was the first, and that's the real second. It's a bit confusing now, right? So Reverend Smith, he was a United Irishman. He flew the flag here in Rannelstown, but he was also at the Battle of Ballynahinch, and during his trial he was tried for being at Ballynahinch, and people gave evidence. Yes, we've seen Reverend Smith. He was sentenced to be killed. However, at that time, it was a couple of months after the rebellion, and the authorities needed to stop the hangings. They were creating too many martyrs. Thus, this was the leadership of the Presbyterian Church, and they wanted to try to subdue these boys. Because once the Ulster Scots get in their head that they're going to do something, they do it, and there's no stopping them at times. The first place to rise in Ulster here wasn't Antrim, it wasn't Rannelstown. It was Larne. Larne came out at 2 o'clock that morning to rebel. Now, I got my car MOT'd in Larne 2 years ago now, during the height of that COVID business, you know. And you go into it and you see all the flies flying. You'd think you were going to some royal household, you know. All Union Jacks everywhere. But that's where it all started. Larne, the radical Presbyterian Ulster Scots of Larne, at 2 a.m. their leadership flitted, and they elected a Roman Catholic church called James O'Rourke to lead them into Larne, and they took Larne for the United Irishmen. at 2 a.m. that morning, which is a fabulous bit of history of all religions come together. And Antrim here, or Browstown was the same. You get all these different accounts of different flags flying, defender flags. One account says remember Armagh in it from the atrocities which were happening there in 95, 96. There were people being burnt out of the house by the yeomen, which were, well, it was actually by the Orange Order masquerading as yeomen. And this is all documented in the Belfast newsletter. Orange men burned down house, and it's mad when you see it. It's a history that isn't taught by the Orange Order because they don't want you to know it. But up here, that's Reverend Smith's church. And we have a column coming down here of United Irishmen from Grogan Hill, about 2.5 miles up this direction here. Grogan Hill is also where the first Orange Hall meeting was established. I think it was 1860-ish, just opposite Grogan Hill. So that's my bit for here. There's toilets somewhere. Where is it, Donald?
Down in the town.
Courthouse. After the rebellion, the courthouse itself was burnt to the ground. I'll tell you how it was burnt in a wee second. But I never looked up. But if you just look up on that wall there, it was only at Christmas when I was looking again. I knew I was doing these tours, and I went into these bars here again, looking, where is this courthouse? And then I looked up, and there it was, a wee plaque up in this bit above Eurotronics, saying this is the possession of the old courthouse. It took me 11 years to find that. You know what? It kicked myself all the way home. I couldn't believe it. You know, but no one flipping knew. Every bar. But right, so this place here, Ranelagh, it was garrisoned by 50 members of it's called the Tomb Yeomanry, commanded by Lieutenant Colonel Ellis and Lieutenant Colonel Jones. These were two landowners, and they would have known nearly everybody. So you had 6,000 rebels coming from this direction here. Their overall command was a man named James Dickey, from attorney from Crumlin. So he had below him was a man called Henderson. He was in charge of the people coming from this direction here. So we had 3 columns coming from here, all joined together. When they got together here, Henderson took cold feet, left something in the oven, and had a run. So it was picked up by someone else. Have it here. But Captain Henderson, he took flight, and there was a boy called George Dixon. He then took control up here, and everybody came down here with their pikes showing, and there's about 80 musketeers, the muskets loaded. The yeomen came out of their market house in a line here, 50 of them. They formed the line. 2 minutes after, they were up against each other, nothing happened. There's a bit of a lull. Then the people from Antrim side, Cravery, came, commanded by a man called John R. He was an uncle of William R. the Martyr. Came about 2,000 men across the bridge. So now they were surrounded. Right, battle starts. You have the local yeomen who knew everybody in the town. You know, they knew who they were shooting at. So accounts say that they fired above each other's head. The musketeers fired above each other's head also. There's a couple of fatalities. 2 United Irishmen fell dead on either side. 3 yeomen dead in the middle of the road here. If they were firing properly at each other, they would have been massacred. But they had to retreat into the old market house, which gladly is where I thought it was. So it's in the book, it's in the right place anyway. So that was good. So they retreated into the market house. They went up the second floor, and they fired out the windows. So at this point, the whole town was taken. They were being fired at by the yeomen in the top floor here, and they were starting to lose men. Right, 5 or 6 men fell dead. One lady looks in at the side, and she says she sees a lump of hay and straw to feed the cavalry. So she decided, right, look, there's straw there, burn them out. So they grabbed the straw, put it underneath the courthouse, and lo and behold, a couple of minutes later, the yeomen have smoke coming in, and the fire starts. So a flag of truce comes out of here, and ladders are put up, and thankfully they were all saved, all the ones that are still living. They're saved, taken down, and they're taken up to the old Elizabethan fort up at Brogan Hill here. So that's a battle that's won. Antrim's now in the hands of the United Irishmen, and the prisoners are up at Brogan Fort, and Crumlin man James Thickley, he then takes it onto Ranelagh. Although Adam Hill at this time didn't know this. Adam Hill, the one he negotiated all the time, he actually was a loyalist anyway, you know. But that's it for the Battle of Antrim. You have about 10,000 men, all religions, all different flags flying. As I said, it was very colourful, and there's been a lot of noise and really a lot of celebration from here. So from here, they're meant to go. A column is dispatched to take down the Tomb Bridge, and the rest are meant to come into Antrim. So as Donald said at the start of the tomb, he read out the command which was given to the Randallstown folk was Army of Ulster, take Randallstown and then form a junction to meet me in Antrim. So about 4 or 5 men decided they had to then come out of here and make their way to Antrim town. However, they took their time and they were very slow. And we'll see what happens to them as we progress and in the latter part of the tour. So now we're going to go to the viaduct, which has been newly done up, and I'm going to tell you a wee story about the court-martial record, which will surprise a lot of people. So we'll get back on the bus here and we'll take you off. And then the other side the column was led by Dixon, a Con McGuinness and a Halliday. So the town was taken and that was okay. Now another person who participated in this battle for Ranelagh was another William R. Right? There's a lot of R's in this and they're all different. And he was sentenced to go to Australia into penal servitude. So he read a book while he was in Australia, and it was called A Diary of an Irish Rebel. So I'll just read you a wee bit of this diary for just a couple of lines. The United Irishmen assemble to effect a revolution and throw the yoke of military government. A large body of people attack Antrim under the command of Henry McCracken as general. A hard fight ensures. A reinforcement comes from Belfast and Blair's camp, and the people are repulsed. I am at Ranelagh, and a number of people attack it. Beats the military, disarms them. 2 men, Republicans, are killed, and 3 royalists. The people repair to a hill in the care of Reverend Hayes. So the Reverend Hayes, the Presbyterian minister, he takes a lot of people then on up the Brogan Hill. And throughout the day, the ministers are all giving people services. You know, these firebrand services, kind of showing that it's okay to rise against your overlords, and showing that what it says in the Bible and how biblical times we did it back then, justifying everything. But William R, big Presbyterian family, he was sentenced for administering the Defenders' Oath of Allegiance. Now, if anybody knows anything about Irish history, they'll tell you that the Defenders was a purely Catholic organisation, and if you go on, just Google it, you'll find all Catholic organisation, absolute rubbish. There's up here, it was full of Presbyterians, and some of them were both Presbyterians and Uniteders. William R from Cravery, about 3-4 miles over that direction, had to come this way here with a group of other Presbyterians, probably all Defenders, you know, and a mix of both. But you can't believe all you hear or you read in the history books, and it's great to find these books, these bits and pieces which contradict everything. When we're in Antrim, I'll tell you a couple of stories about other Defenders who were also Presbyterians, not ours. Our name anyway. So Ranelagh has a couple of famous links. You probably heard of a couple. Anybody know a man called Marion was Marion Morrison.
Morrison, aye.
Yeah. John Wayne, otherwise called. Well, John Wayne's great granddad was a man named Robert Morrison. During 1798, Robert was a 16-year-old boy. He had lost his father, and he had his mother, and he was looking after three young boys. So it's unknown if Robert would have been a United Irishman, or would have been able to come out here to participate as a United Irishman in the rebellion here. But folklore passed down in America, and some made-up folklore states that he was a United Irishman, and he was sentenced. Some of the stuff was just rubbish, made up. But supposedly a bounty was placed on his head, and he emigrated in 1803. Now, a bounty wouldn't have been put on his head in 1803 because there was amnesties. So anything, if he was a United Irishman, it would have been forgot about to try and bring all the Presbyterians back into the fold as such, you know. So you've got this Robert Morrison, and people say is the great grandfather of John Wayne. John Wayne himself, there was 3 people in Ulster here which could have been John Wayne's Robert Morrison. One man was from Birch Mills. He was a pipe maker in a forge, and he was actually imprisoned in Belfast in 1797 and again in 1798. So I think it was more likely him, because he disappears from all records. There was also another Robert Morrison, who as a young boy in 1793 had enough of over here, and he flits to France and he joins the French Legion, and he's there as an officer in the French Legion before Napoleon disbands it, and then he reforms it in 1803. So he's in France throughout, fighting away for Napoleon. So I think this is it for me. This place was all done up about 2 years ago, and it's fabulous. The community took it over. It was just an old viaduct. When?
1 year.
A year ago.
We opened it on May 2nd of 2022.
Wow.
May 2nd, it's open. It's brilliant. You know, it's fabulous to have something like this here on your doorstep. For, as you probably know or have heard of before, this is where the meeting point was for the United Irishmen in northeast Antrim. So once Larne was taken, once Ballinger was taken, Ballyclare, they all came up here. This is where they were all to meet. So once Larne was taken 2 o'clock in the morning, the orders that were sent out in Mayfield had to be changed to not to go to Larne, to come straight to here. The Ballyclare ones were all to come up here. So in the morning of the 7th of June, this building was taken over. This building was built in 1720. It was an old schoolhouse for St. John's Church of Ireland, which we passed them out. So it was taken over, and this was the base of operations in here, and up to the north where you could see everything. Now, on the 7th morning, all the magistrates which were taken prisoner were kept in here. Also up here, preaching as they were throughout the day, was the Reverend Adam Hill from Ballinger and the Reverend Foot Marshall from Ballyclare. They were up here preaching all throughout the day, rallying the troops and really justifying what we were doing and how we'll only benefit from being free from the yoke of British rule kind of thing, you know. So this is where they're all kept in here. It's then turned into a pub, and that's where you get the moat in. At the side you have a nice mural at the top if you go and have a wee look after, you know. But it's now owned by an American church, right? And you have these outlandish retreats into it from America over to here. Yeah. I just watched the trailer. Sorry. So there's actually meant to be a cave from in there on the rafters right up to Donegal Motte. Like, if you look up here, you can see nothing, but in the winter time, that's old Norman motte. There was a motte in Bailey Castle when the Normans came in. They built these all over the place, and that's why they assembled here, because everybody knew this. It was an old Irish ecclesiastical site as well. St. John's Church is on top of an old Irish church site, which we'll go to now. But Dawn is just going up to Mrs. Campbell's site. She owns the motte land, and we just have to get permission from her first. Now, look, we have to split up some of you are going to come with me and go into St. John's Church of Ireland, where I've got a couple of good stories for you in there. And only fit people will then be able to go up and climb the moat. And it's very, very dangerous, so it's only for the fittest. Yep. I expect it's up to yourselves.
It doesn't used to be dangerous.
Very dangerous. It has been out of use for about 10 years. It was locally accessed when it was a garden centre, and it was very well maintained. But it's gone into very much disrepair.
Stephen, the levels behind you.
Oh sure, they're mates.
Big T.
Make tea. So I'll just take it over here now, and then hopefully.
Sort of roughly see what was happening, the smoke coming from the town of Antrim. There's different numbers, differing numbers as to how many assembled here, rising up to about 15,000, starting at about 5,000, so anything else in between possibly. But on average, I estimate maybe 7,000 men would have assembled around here, coming mostly from, you know, the northern areas, from Ballymena, from Kells, even from Larne. And this was known, you know, as and it was a major landmark, of course, in County Antrim as well. But the views, you can just see, we're obviously looking now onto Loch Ney. There's all the Toon people can wave to their friends there now. There you go. And you can't see, I grew up, you know, just on the shores of Loch Ney down here. And as a child, you know, I couldn't see the other end, so I thought it was the ocean.
There's the airport.
See, you know.
See the airport there
You
too.
can see the airport. Sean's just pointing out the international
See the
airport.
masts there.
The sort of mass in the distance there. And Antrim, so you can't really see the town per se. You probably would have seen it better.
Antrim's just where the wind turbine is there,
out
just
to the
down
left there,
below
just in
there. like,
I
yeah.
was born and brought up on the shores of the Dublin Road. You know, the old Deer Park Hotel, if you remember where that is.
Yeah.
Yep. But it's beautiful. And there would have been views probably all around here as well. Let's get a photograph of you.
He was renovating it. One of his local farmers, a wee boy called, was it Thomas Elliott?
Yes.
Tommy Elliott, he owns a car dealership in Antrim town there. Only a wee boy at 11 or 12, he decided to give him a wee hand, you know, as he would as a wee young boy. So he came in here and they started finding these wee cannonballs. Sort of wondering what's going on here. So as an adult, your boy, what's his name again?
Bobby Elliott.
Bobby Elliott. He took cannonballs to Queens to see what they were, and he was told these are from 1780s, 1790s, and probably from the Battle of Antrim. So before Colonel Durham came and saved the day at the Battle of Antrim, he was held up here by the United Irishmen, but he just piled a whole head of cannonballs in here and just killed everybody before making it to Antrim at 4 o'clock. Otherwise he would have got there a lot faster. So that's the story of this here Dunavry Mill. So we'll go in here and get some deep now.